don't really care how you look, But a little disclaimer is this session will be recorded. In fact, it's recording now so that we can use it for future reference and use. At the end of the session today, we will be putting in a feedback form so that we can hold some accountability in case in the future, if districts are interested in using attendance at these webinars for professional learning, and also so that we can better meet your needs in our region and outside the region. Any questions before we get started? Again, the link right here for the presentation is in the chat window, and the session for today, it will be a presentation format, and then at the end, we'll hold a question and answer session. So without any further ado, I will introduce and let Scott take over.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. So just going to start our presentation here. Again, you can follow along. And we're going to be talking about webcasting tools today. First off, we're going to cover some best practices and just some general information behind the concept itself, because I think a lot of people at this point have been on the receiving end. But what about when you're going to do your first one, present it to students or parents or whoever you might be doing it with? So just a very broad definition of a webcast from good old Wikipedia here. A webcast is a media presentation distributed over the internet using streaming media technology to distribute a single content source to many simultaneously. That's a hard word too. A lot of people. So essentially you're doing a meeting that you could be doing in person, but you're doing it over the internet instead. And you may either, in the last sentence there is an important one. It can either be a live meeting like ours today, or on demand, which means it's recorded and people access it, which if you're not here today, but you're watching this at a later point, you are fitting into that category for this webcast. So just some basic uses of a platform like this for video conferencing. You can use it for one-on-one meetings. So let's say rather than a phone call, you like to actually see a person's face. You can do a meeting like this. And this has actually been around for a while. You think Apple, they have FaceTime on their iPhones. And so you call somebody else with an iPhone and you can do FaceTime. And it's essentially the exact same thing as a one-on-one meeting that we're doing here. And you can actually include other people in those and do a small group meeting too, FaceTiming, multiple people together. A secondary use is for small and large group meetings of all types. So right now we have like 20 some on the meeting here, and we're just doing a small meeting. This Zoom room can contain, I think, up to 250 people at once, and I think you can expand that up to like 1,000 people at one time, which would be a very large group meeting. When we're thinking educationally speaking, and probably what is on the foremost thought of most people's mind is the ability to hold a class or meet with your students using a web conferencing software. And in education, it's useful for even more than that. Sure, you can hold a class and like do face-to-face class time, but you can also use it for things like IEP meetings or parent-teacher conferences. And those are kind of the things that are available, let's say even next year when we're back in session. Maybe a parent can't make it in, but they could do a Zoom. And you could use this platform to meet with that parent without having to have them make it to the physical building. And then kind of the last use there is to present and record content for distribution. And we're going to be doing a session, I think, next week on screencasting. But you can use a video conferencing platform like this to do essentially a screencast, do a recording of some kind of content. Like we're doing today, we're recording this, and then we're going to make it available for at a later point. So let's say you wanted to record a message for your kids, you could fire up a web conference of one person, just yourself, record the session, and then send that recording out to whoever needs to be able to see or to view it at that point. So those are some of the basic uses. And I just wanted to look at some of the best practices involved in using web conferencing software. And I split them into 3 different categories: before, during, and after. So before, you want to do a test run of your software. You want to make sure, especially if you're hosting it, that you can access it. Things are working. Your headset's working. Your video camera's working. All those pieces. And whenever you change equipment, let's say you're going to using a different computer, or you're in a different location or on a different Wi-Fi network, you want to log in and make sure all of your equipment is using before you get to the meeting. You're going to have problems because it's technology, and things will go wrong, but you want to mitigate that as best as possible. The second thing you want to do is make note of what is behind you, wherever you are video recording, and you want to ensure that there's nothing um, bad back there, or there's nothing distracting in your background, especially if you're going to have your video running the whole time. Just think about what's running on your computer. The next three, you want to close out all unnecessary programs and tabs and silence notifications. So you don't want to have your mail program running and popping up notifications in the bottom right corner of your video if you're sharing your desktop screen. Or if you get emails every 2 minutes, you don't want it to go ding, 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 ding for the people who you're presenting to. And the last one there is check for sensitive info on the desktop. And I kind of wanted to ask this question here. So before we started, I had my screen minimized and the presentation was up, but I had 4 pieces of sensitive information displayed in the background of my desktop, and I was wondering if anybody noticed those pieces. So I'm going to give you just a minute there to type in the chat if you notice a piece of either sensitive or awkward information on my screen of my computer uh, before we started this presentation. So let me know if you saw anything. Um, there was, I think, 4 different things there that were kind of sketchy. Nope, nope. Did anybody? Anybody? Nobody was looking. Hmm.
Sky, I think our students are so observant, though. I'm sure they would be seeing it. They've said very observant comments to me that I'd never noticed about myself. So I'm sure they would observe our screen.
I'm gonna blow it back down here so you can kind of see some of the things I had here by mistake. And as educators, it's very easy to leave extra tabs open. So left to right, I have over here Ben's social broke off. That's Ben's social security number. It's not really his social security number, but that's my son, and uh, that's a pretty sensitive piece of information to have on the screen. On the left over here, I have something about this girl named Cindy and child abuse. Uh, don't know what that is, but that could be kind of sketchy. There's 2 other pieces on here if you look closely. Anybody see what they are? Can pick them out. Anybody see? Anybody? Yeah, the Amazon tab. Anybody read what that is all about? It's kind of awkward.
You would have that.
So yeah, you looking on Amazon and you have a tab open and you see what you're searching for. So UTI medicine. Nobody needs to know you're searching for UTI medicine. And then yeah, down here in the bottom, I have student grades. I have student login information, student email addresses, birthday. From our learning management system, and this is attested, it's not real student information, but that's up too because I'm in there all the time working with our equipped students at the IU. And those are the things you really want to clean up before you share your desktop. And I've been on a lot of computer Zoom presentations over the last few days because of this, and I have seen some interesting things. People like to do post-it notes on their desktops, and you can kind of seeing people's to-do list is there's probably too much information in there. Uh, and people are doing this Zoom thing and they're not really thinking through that because they're used to their computer desktop being their personal space and nobody ever sees. So just you want to think through that before you share your desktop. So we're going to go back in here to our presentation. Just the last thing, you want to log in early to your presentation, and for 2 reasons. Number one, Zoom defaults to your participants not being able to get in until you get in as the host. And you can turn that off, but if you have it turned on, you want to be there so people can get in. And number two, you want to make sure it's working. Just like the beginning, you want to make sure the room is working, the link still works, and stuff like that for your meeting. Some best practices during your meeting. When you're doing a presentation like this, it's a really good idea to mute everyone, and we're going to look at how to do that towards the end here. And not because you want to discourage sharing, but because people are, especially now, are in their home environments, and there's a lot of ambient noise in the backgrounds. Even in my room here, I'm wearing a headset to cut out a lot of the background noise, but I have a space heater running because I'm in a room without heat. and that would be fairly loud if I wasn't using this headset and be giving feedback. There's like dogs, there's other people in the house. There's feedback between like the microphone and the speakers, people's computers and stuff like that. So you want to be aware of that and know how to do that, just so you're not getting that distracting feedback. You want to encourage video usage, and because especially if you're using this with your classroom and your kids, or in meetings with parents or anything like that. If you're not using the video features of Zoom, you might as well just do a phone call. Really, use those features that are available. There's lots of statistics about how much of communication is really about picking up on the nonverbal communication somebody is doing, and you're not going to get that without that video there and present. And these webinars we are doing are great chances to practice. If you're not comfortable with having video on, just turn it on and practice sitting there with the video on and seeing your face, and you'll get used to it pretty fast. And it's just going to make you more confident when you're going to have to do this yourselves with parents and students and teachers and other staff. And then the chat feature, my graphic cut off the word questions. Oops. Use the chat feature for like back channel communication, which is just conversation while the presentation is going on and questions you may have. And that chat is persistent. So like over the last few pieces, you could be asking questions and we can answer them then at the end. And then you don't forget what your question was. And at the end and the after best practices, it's a great idea to send up follow-up email, and you're going to receive one from us after this session, just asking you how you thought it went. And you want to gather feedback, especially in the beginning. So let's say you're doing this a few times, and maybe your internet connection is terrible, and you break up a lot. Your students don't get it. You're breaking up, and stuff like that, or the graphics on the screen aren't visible, or it's too small. Unless somebody tells you that, all you can see is what you are doing. And my presentation is humongous here because I'm presenting on my screen, and I don't know what it looks like from your perspective. So those are just some best practices, and these are some of the common platforms that are available out there. Zoom is by far the most used of all of the platforms, and I think that is honestly because they do have the most features available. Their free plan is also much better than comparable plans from everybody else as far as length of time and amount of people. We're not going to get into too much of that because right now I think that's all suspended anyway. I think all the free plans for all of these allow you to do most of the pro features through like July because of the current situation. So we have Zoom. GoToMeeting is a popular one. And then Microsoft Teams and Google Meet are very, very specific to your organization and what software you're using. So if you're a Google App for Education school, Google Meet is built into your platform. It integrates very nicely and does most of the things that Zoom can do. And it's free, which again is not a big deal right now, but looking into the future down the road, Google is a free tool that is built into what you already might be using in your school. So I wanted to take just the last little bit here to do a closer look at Zoom itself, and from the kind of the presenting side of things, and just kind of where things are on the screen, and how you can see those. And I was trying to figure out the best way to do this because you can't actually see when you share your screen the presentation screen. So I took a picture, and we'll pull it up here. So this is kind of what it looks like from the admin side of things. And also from your side, you probably have a lot of these same tools. If you hover over the video, the bar on the bottom opens up. Some things you're not going to see unless you're hosting. On the bottom, you have the ability to do polls. So you can see that down here at the bottom, polling. There's the ability to record the session, which we are doing right now. You can do breakout rooms, which on Friday for our Friday conversations, we're going to kind of explore breakout rooms and use those to kind of split people up by topic of conversation a little bit. On the left, on the right over here, so you have the kind of the section where participants are living in, and there's some feedback tools available uh, that you can do on. You can ask your participants like, as how fast are we going, how slow are we going, or does everybody understand? And they can do little check boxes, yes, no, and stuff like that. Right here, as a host, you have the mute all button, and that's a good tool to just mute everybody at the beginning of the session so you don't have lots of that feedback coming through. I think that pretty much covers most of the features, at least the basic features of hosting that are available to you in the Zoom platform. So let's close this screenshot here. And and I think I guess at this point I want to open up to both Aaron and Becky. Just anything you want to add as far as like tips and tricks or best practices or some of the tools available. And we'll do that first, and then if you want to post questions in the chat, and we will go through and answer them. And maybe we'll be able to unmute people as we go here to ask some questions. But let's start there. Okay.
Yeah, so I have found Zoom to be really helpful. Someone mentioned, we're talking about other platforms and everything. With Zoom, I feel like things are a lot clearer. And with the breakout rooms, a lot of the more professional, like the professional entities and the committees and state organizations, they use Zoom. I found it very easy. Now, if you're running it with your classroom, you you can make a private meeting and then give a code for people. So that's another way you could do it. Erin, do you want to add anything?
Yes. So I do agree with Becky in the way that I think it's really easy for adults to navigate. I do think our students are going to find it very easy to navigate as well. I know some educators that I've been talking to that have been using this just to kind of check in with their students. They get really excited, as well as my 5-year-old daughter has been using this to do virtual play dates with her friends, just to see their faces. So I think that this tool can be used by all different ages. Carla and I were talking before it started about, early intervention or primary students looking totally different than our high school students, but I still think this tool can be valuable for our primary students as well. There are a few things that some computers will allow you to do on your Zoom that others will not. We found that out yesterday playing with a few different devices. For example, a colleague of ours that's at the IU was in a spot where his internet wasn't as strong. So if he turned off his the visual of the camera, his audio came over stronger. Also, another colleague and I were working with it last night, and her MacBook or Chromebook wasn't giving her the same options as when she went on her Dell computer. So just know that some of the options that a colleague has might be different if you're using different devices. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, Scott.
Yeah. For the most part, the basic features are all available across all devices, but it kind of goes into the before thing. You want to make sure the device you're using has the features available that you want to use. And if it doesn't, if you're like expecting something, you want to make sure you can move to another device and use, make sure you have the features you want. So.
Yeah, Megan had just said in there that in the chat there that the Chromebook Pro doesn't have all the features. For example, we were trying to do the record on there so that her students could have an opportunity to view it later, and we didn't have that as an option yesterday.
Sure. So yeah, in polling, so you can create polls just by clicking the pull button, and then you send it out through the Zoom. This is kind of what it looks like on the Zoom side of things right here after you click the button. But all right.